A friend of mine never could have imagined he'd be the one to invite his wife's lover into their home. You might assume the lover was someone he knew, but you'd be wrong. Trust me, the story behind this is stranger than you'd think. Let me tell you how it all unfolded and what happened next. The morning light filtered through the blinds as Camden stood by the kitchen counter, preparing his coffee. His wedding band gleamed in the light, a reminder of vows that had begun to feel like a burden. The clock read 7:15. He knew their mornings well. A decade of marriage had made him intimately familiar with the rhythm of their mornings, a routine once seamless, as natural as the lines on his palm. Any moment now, Vanessa would emerge, full of her usual frantic energy. But today felt different. The routine, once effortless, now seemed off. Longer showers, careful outfit choices, subtle shifts that unsettled him. His thoughts were interrupted by Vanessa's heels clicking against the floor. She appeared in the doorway, impeccably dressed, her hair styled with the precision she once reserved for date nights. Morning, Camden greeted her, his eyes following her as she breezed past him, heading straight for the coffee machine, phone already in hand. Morning, she murmured, barely glancing up as she typed out a message. Want breakfast? I can make eggs, he offered. No time, she replied briskly, pouring coffee into a travel mug without looking up. Big presentation today. The Johnson account needs last-minute adjustments. Camden nodded, though he couldn't ignore how deliberately she was avoiding his eyes. So, another late night, then? Most likely, she said, dropping a tea bag into her mug. Don't wait up. I'll grab dinner at the office. I could bring you lunch, he suggested hesitantly. There's a new Thai place near your building. For the first time that morning, she actually met his gaze, but the moment was fleeting, her eyes darting away almost instantly. That's sweet, but I've got a working lunch with the team. Maybe another time, she said. Just then, her phone buzzed. She turned slightly, subtly angling the screen away from his view as she tapped out a response. I should get going, she announced, slinging her purse over her shoulder and moving toward the hallway mirror. She paused to apply a fresh coat of lipstick, Ruby Woo, the shade he had given her last Christmas, before fluffing her hair with the practiced ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times before. Have a good day. Camden sat motionless for a while, lost in thought, trying to pinpoint the moment when everything had started unraveling. It hadn't happened in an instant. There was no single, defining event. It had been gradual, a slow erosion, like waves wearing away at the shore. But looking back now, the signs had been there all along. New clothes with missing tags, hushed phone calls taken out of earshot. At work, focusing proved impossible. The blueprints for the Harrison project blurred before him, his thoughts stubbornly looping back to the unease that had settled in his gut that morning. Earth to Camden, a voice broke through his daze. Arthur, his colleague and closest friend, waved a hand in front of his face. You've been staring at that section for 20 minutes. What's up? Camden mustered a half-hearted smile. Just thinking about the support beam placement, he lied smoothly. Arthur leaned against the desk, lowering his voice. You sure it's not something else? You've been kinda off lately. It's nothing, Camden replied. Just some stuff at home I need to figure out. Arthur held up his hands in surrender. All right, man. Not my business. Just saying, I'm here if you want to talk. Camden gave a slight nod, appreciating the offer but unwilling to put his suspicions into words. Admitting them would make them real, and he wasn't ready for that. Not yet. The hours crawled by, each one tempting him to leave work early and drive past Vanessa's office, just to see if her working lunch story checked out. Instead, he buried himself in the Harrison project, making more progress in one afternoon than he had all week. In an effort to cling to some sense of normalcy, he decided to cook dinner, one small attempt at holding on to a life that was slipping further out of reach. On his way home, Camden stopped by the grocery store, picking up everything he needed for Vanessa's favorite dish, chicken marsala. He moved through the routine of cooking. The chicken had just come out of the oven when he heard her key turn in the lock. She was home earlier than expected. Smells amazing, Vanessa said as she walked into the kitchen, her cheeks slightly flushed, her hair just tousled enough to make Camden wonder if it was the wind or something else. I thought we could actually have dinner together for once, Camden said casually, keeping his voice light as he plated the food. How'd the presentation go? It went great, she answered, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous habit Camden had learned to recognize over the years. The client loved our ideas. We're moving forward with the full proposal. Camden nodded and placed their plates on the dining table. He had opened a bottle of red wine earlier, letting it breathe, and now he poured her a glass. Vanessa slid into her seat and immediately reached for her phone. Work can wait, he said, keeping his tone easygoing. When was the last time we actually sat down for dinner together? A flicker of guilt crossed her face as she set the phone down. You're right, she said, offering a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. This looks amazing, honey. The meal began, but there was a heaviness between them. The clink of cutlery and the scrape of plates were the only sounds filling the space. Camden studied her, noticing how her eyes kept flicking toward the phone, how her leg bounced under the table, a little habit he used to find endearing. How's the Johnson account really going? He asked, breaking the silence. Must be keeping you busy with all these late nights. Vanessa looked up, slightly startled. Yeah, she said, a little too quickly. The client has really specific demands. Oscar, she hesitated, just for a second, but long enough for Camden to notice. The team's been working extra hours to meet expectations. Right then, her phone lit up on the table between them. She shifted, angling it away, but not before Camden caught a glimpse of the message. The words burned into his mind. I can't wait to do it again with you in the shower. Everything stopped. You good? He asked. Just work stuff, she muttered, shoving her phone into her pocket, as if that could erase what he'd just seen. You know how it is, deadlines, client pressure. Camden forced himself to take another bite of chicken. His mind spun, replaying every moment from the past few months with a brutal new clarity. The late nights, the secretive phone, the growing distance, it all made sense now. I should look over some files for tomorrow, Vanessa said abruptly, standing so fast that her chair scraped against the floor. Her plate, barely touched, sat forgotten. Thanks for dinner. It was delicious. Camden watched as she walked toward the home office, his appetite completely gone. The urge to confront her, to demand the truth, burned inside him. But something colder, sharper, told him to wait. He needed more. He needed certainty before he acted. That night, as they lay in bed, Camden thought back to their wedding day, to the joy in her eyes when she promised to love him forever. That moment felt like a lifetime ago, and now the memory was tainted by the weight of betrayal. The next morning, Camden set his plan in motion. He left the house early, but parked near Vanessa's office instead. From his car, he watched as she arrived, noting the way she paused to check her reflection in the glass door before stepping inside. 20 minutes later, a man he didn't recognize followed her in, holding the door open with a familiarity that sent a fresh wave of unease through Camden. The way they interacted, too close, too comfortable, spoke volumes. Over the next few days, he gathered more pieces of the truth. Vanessa never left her phone unattended, even bringing it into the bathroom with her. But eventually, her confidence slipped. One evening, while she was in the shower, Camden saw his chance. He unlocked her phone, grateful she hadn't changed the password. Flirty, suggestive messages from Oscar Bullman. Mentions of meetings that didn't appear on her work calendar. Camden quickly searched Oscar's name on LinkedIn, and the profile that popped up confirmed everything. Early 30s, dark hair perfectly styled, a professional headshot that looked straight out of a magazine. A senior account manager at Vanessa's firm, praised for his charm and ability to build client relationships. That evening, he played along, pretending everything was fine as Vanessa talked about work. He noticed how she subtly checked her phone under the table, the small, secretive smile that flickered across her lips as she read messages he couldn't see. The final proof came when he stopped for coffee near her office, under the pretense of a client meeting. At a nearby table, two women chatted just loud enough for him to catch every word. Did you see them at the holiday party? One of them asked. Oscar was practically glued to Vanessa. He's such a player. Right? The other responded, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Same thing last year. Though, he usually sticks to single women. Camden's fingers tightened around his coffee cup, the cardboard crumpling slightly under his grip. Well, you know what they say about the quiet ones, the first woman continued. She always seemed so put together. But I guess Oscar has a way of bringing out the wild side. Did you see them at Murphy's last week? The second woman asked. I was there with Eric, and they were in the back booth. Trust me, they weren't talking about the Johnson account. Their laughter rang in Camden's ears like nails on a chalkboard. He stood abruptly, leaving his coffee half-finished as he walked toward the door. That evening, as Vanessa got ready for yet another late meeting, Camden watched her closely. He saw everything now. The fresh coat of lipstick, the careful smoothing of her skirt, the way she checked her reflection, making sure every detail was perfect. Don't wait up, she called, her voice light and practiced. Lots to review for the Johnson account. Of course, Camden said evenly. Good luck with the review. The door clicked shut behind her. Camden stood at the window, watching her car disappear down the street. He waited a few minutes, then grabbed his keys. Tonight, he was going to find out exactly what kind of review she was having. Following Vanessa was easier than Camden had expected. She drove across town to a quiet Italian restaurant, far from both their home and her office, far enough to avoid anyone who might recognize her. Through the softly glowing window, Camden watched as she walked inside, greeting Oscar with a kiss that left no room for doubt. They slid into a booth, their bodies leaning close, sharing a bottle of wine, laughing as if they didn't have a single worry in the world. Camden sat in his car, unmoving. He watched them, taking in every detail. Oscar's easy smile, the way his hand rested possessively on Vanessa's, the effortless way they existed together. This wasn't a meaningless fling. This was something deeper. The next week blurred into a cycle of careful observation. Camden tracked their meetings, noted every lie Vanessa told to cover her absences. He watched her transform before his eyes, becoming a version of herself he barely recognized. Carefree, flirtatious, alive in a way she hadn't been with him in years. Each night, as she lay beside him, Camden refined his plan. He wasn't interested in a heated confrontation or dramatic accusations. No, he wanted them both to understand exactly what they had done, what their choices had cost him. The next morning, Camden set his plan in motion. His home office became his war room. Photos of Vanessa and Oscar at restaurants, hotels, undeniable proof of her betrayal, spread across his desk. Screenshots of messages he had captured, notes detailing times, locations, and at the center of it all, a single post-it note with Oscar's phone number, taunting him with its existence. That afternoon, Vanessa left her phone unattended once more. When the screen lit up with a notification, Camden seized the moment. Camden picked it up without hesitation, his face betraying nothing as he opened her messages. He typed carefully, mimicking her tone exactly. "I need to see you tonight. Camden's working late on the Harrison project. Come to the house. Don't want to wait for our usual spot." The reply came within seconds. "Dangerous. Your place? What's gotten into you?" Camden took his time with his response, ensuring it felt natural. "Miss you too much. Door will be unlocked. Let yourself in. Want you in my house for once." Oscar's response followed instantly, each word twisting the knife deeper. "Oh, babe. I like this side of you. See you at 8. Can't wait to feel your hands on me." Camden deleted the conversation and set the phone back down. A glance at the clock, 2 p.m. 6 hours until Oscar walked straight into the trap. In his office, Camden picked up his phone and called Arthur. "I need a favor," he said. "If anyone asks, I'm working late on the Harrison project tonight." A pause. "Why, man? You've been acting off." "I just need an alibi," Camden replied flatly. "Can you cover for me?" Arthur hesitated, then sighed. "Yeah, of course. But seriously, if you need to talk." "I don't," Camden cut in. "Just cover for me." Ending the call, Camden leaned back in his chair, eyes scanning the evidence laid out before him. The trap was set. Tonight, Vanessa and Oscar would learn their secret wasn't as safe as they had thought. The next few hours were spent in careful preparation. Camden adjusted the furniture slightly, ensuring clear sight lines. He checked the security cameras he had installed over the past week. Every angle covered, every moment accounted for. Vanessa poured herself a glass of water. "I might head to the gym later," she said, avoiding his gaze. "The Harrison project needs my attention," Camden replied evenly. "I'll probably be at the office late. Don't wait up." For the briefest second, relief flickered across her face. It was subtle, but Camden caught it. "Okay," she said lightly. "Good luck with the project." At 7 o'clock, Camden made a deliberate show of gathering his work materials, shuffling blank papers into his briefcase. As he leaned in to kiss her cheek, his voice was light, almost casual. "Don't work too hard at the gym." "I won't," she responded quickly, her fingers already reaching for her phone as he walked out the door. Camden didn't drive to the office. Instead, he parked a block away, waiting. At exactly 7:45, he spotted Vanessa's car pulling out of the driveway. She wasn't heading to the gym. He had followed her enough times to know her usual route. Like so many nights before, she was on her way to the wine bar 3 blocks from Oscar's apartment, their routine prelude before moving to his place. By 7:55, Camden was back inside his home, waiting in the darkened living room. A raw, violent confrontation had crossed his thoughts before, the urge to make Oscar suffer the way he had suffered. But that was too easy, too fleeting. No, This had to be about something deeper. About consequences. About understanding. At exactly 8 o'clock, the front door unlocked with a quiet click. Confident footsteps echoed down the hallway, unhurried and assured. Camden reached over and flicked on the lamp. The sudden light made Oscar freeze in the doorway, his hand raised mid-motion, adjusting his tie. He was younger than Camden had expected in person, early 30s, with a kind of polished, gym-sculpted look. Whatever smug confidence he had walked in with vanished the moment his eyes met Camden's. Reality crashed down, shattering whatever fantasy Oscar had been entertaining. "You must be Oscar," Camden said. "Come in. We should talk about your relationship with my wife." Oscar took a half-step back. "There's been a misunderstanding," he stammered. "No misunderstanding," Camden said coldly. "Sit down." Oscar hesitated before lowering himself into the armchair. "Listen, I don't want any trouble," he started. "This is clearly a sensitive situation." Camden let out a dry, humorless chuckle. "Sensitive? Trouble was thinking you could walk into my house, into my life, and that there wouldn't be consequences. This is just reality catching up to you." Oscar swallowed hard. "She said you two were having problems," he muttered. "That the marriage was over. That you were distant. And you believed her?" Camden stepped closer. "Or did you just not care? How many married women have you pursued, Oscar? Word around the office is I'm not the first husband you've disrespected. You have quite the reputation, don't you? The charming account manager who preys on women looking for an escape. Tell me, do you have a system? Or do you just keep throwing out lines until someone bites?" "This is insane," Oscar muttered, pushing himself up from the chair. "I'm leaving." Camden's hand shot out, gripping Oscar's shoulder with bruising force. "Not yet." With one hard shove, he sent Oscar crashing back into the chair. "You're going to sit there and listen to exactly what kind of man you are. Get your hands off me." Oscar snarled, attempting to push away, but Camden's grip only tightened. "I said listen." Camden shoved him harder, the chair groaning under the force. "You walked into my home like you owned it. Like you could take something that wasn't yours. But it stops now." Oscar tried to lunge up again, but Camden's fist connected with his jaw before he could react, sending him sprawling over the coffee table. Camden exhaled, steady despite the adrenaline pounding in his veins. "I've done my research," he said, stepping over Oscar's crumpled form. 3 affairs with married women in the past 2 years. HR complaints that vanished. You're not just a homewrecker, Oscar, you're a serial homewrecker." Oscar wiped at his bleeding lip. "You don't know anything." "Oh, but I do." Camden pulled out his phone, flipping through the evidence. "Texts, emails, photos. I've documented everything. Every meeting. Every lie. One email to your company about your extracurricular activities with a married coworker, and your career is done. How many firms want to deal with someone like you?" Oscar's breath came faster. What do you want?" he asked, his voice shaking. Camden crouched down, bringing himself eye level with him. "I want you to understand something. You're not her escape. You're not some great romance. You're a convenient distraction. A temporary indulgence that won't mean a damn thing when the dust settles." Oscar flinched as Camden leaned in closer. "Here's how this plays out. You disappear from her life. No goodbyes. No explanations," Camden continued, voice razor sharp. "You'll block her number. Avoid her at work. If she tries to contact you, remember this moment." Oscar's jaw tightened. "You're crazy." Camden's fist slammed into him again, sending Oscar sprawling back against the floor. "No, Oscar. I'm just done being patient." He grabbed Oscar by the collar, yanking him back up. The expensive fabric of his shirt ripped slightly under the pressure. "Do we understand each other?" Camden's voice was ice. Oscar nodded frantically. "Yeah, I get it. It's over. I'll stay away." "Good." Camden released him, watching as Oscar stumbled toward the door. "If I ever see you near my wife again, this conversation will be the least of your worries," he added. Oscar didn't hesitate. He bolted, slamming the door behind him. Through the window, Camden watched him scramble to his car, fumbling with his keys before peeling off down the street. Silence settled over the house once more. Phase 1 was complete. Now came the harder conversation. At 9:15, headlights cut across the window. Camden sat in his armchair, a glass of whiskey in hand, waiting. The front door opened, and Vanessa stepped inside. She froze when she saw him. "Camden." Her voice wavered with surprise. "I thought you were at the Harrison Project." Camden took a slow sip of his whiskey, his expression unreadable. Sit down, Vanessa. There was something in his voice, something controlled, unyielding. We need to talk about Oscar. The color drained from her face. What are you? Camden tilted his head slightly, watching her. She had no idea what was coming. Don't. Camden cut her off, his grip tightening around his glass. Don't insult me with more lies. Not anymore. Camden, please. I can explain everything. Vanessa started, her voice shaking. Explain what? Camden snapped. The late nights? The gym sessions that somehow never messed up your hair? Or maybe the texts about a shower while we were having dinner together? He pulled out his phone, the screen glowing with undeniable proof, and held it up for her to see. Tears welled in her eyes. I love you, Camden. It was a mistake, she sobbed, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Please, we can fix this. There's nothing left to fix, Camden said, towering over her. Your lover just walked out of here with a brand new understanding of boundaries. He won't be waiting for you anymore. Pack your things. I want you out of this house tonight. Camden, please. Where am I supposed to go? She cried, her voice cracking with desperation. That's not my problem, he said flatly. Vanessa's face twisted, her tears giving way to anger. I'll go to the police. Camden let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Go ahead. Tell them how your married lover strolled into my house to sleep with my wife. I'm sure your job will love that story. His expression darkened. And just so you know, everything is recorded, Vanessa. Everything. Her shoulders slumped. She collapsed onto the couch, her sobs racking her body. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. No, you're not, Camden said quietly, his voice cutting through the room like steel. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught. Sorry that your comfortable little life is unraveling. But genuine remorse. He shook his head. That's not in you. He turned and climbed the stairs, his back to her. Pack your bags. When I come back down, I want you gone. Upstairs, Camden sat on the edge of their bed, listening to the sounds of her frantic packing. Drawers yanked open, slammed shut. Hangers scraped across rods. Her muffled sobs punctuated the silence. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. Another message from Arthur, asking if everything was okay. But that wasn't his concern right now. An hour later, the soft click of the front door signaled her departure. Camden walked down the stairs, finding the house empty. On the coffee table, her key lay next to a note. He picked up the key and pocketed it, deliberately ignoring the letter. Whatever justification or apology she had scribbled didn't matter now. His phone buzzed again. Please don't do this. We can talk. I'll do anything. Another followed. I love you, Camden. And another. Where am I supposed to go? My life is here. Camden exhaled slowly, blocking her number and deleting the messages without hesitation. Pouring himself another glass of whiskey, he sat back, taking in the stillness of the house. The next morning was cold and overcast, mirroring Camden's mood. He sat at the kitchen counter, staring at a business card. Joseph Forster, divorce attorney. It had been sitting in his wallet for weeks, waiting for this moment. Camden ran a thumb over the embossed lettering before picking up the card, his mind made up. At exactly 9:47 a.m., the doorbell rang. Camden glanced at the security camera feed on his phone. Vanessa was pacing on the porch, looking disheveled and frantic. Her makeup was streaked from crying, her clothes wrinkled from the night before. The once perfectly styled hair she had fussed over so carefully was now a tangled mess. Camden, she pleaded. Please, I know you're in there. We need to talk about this like adults. Camden didn't move, watching her through the screen as she pressed her forehead against the door. I have nowhere else to go, she continued, her voice breaking. Oscar won't answer my calls. My credit cards aren't working. I tried to get a hotel room, but Camden cut her off. Our joint accounts are frozen. Lawyer's recommendation. You can't do this to me, she shouted, her desperation flaring into rage. I helped build this life too. Everything we have. Everything we had, Camden corrected, still not opening the door. At least let me in so we can talk properly, she begged, pounding a fist against the door. This is still my house too. Camden opened the door abruptly. Vanessa stumbled back in surprise. Actually, it's not your house anymore, he said, his voice ice cold. Her eyes widened. What? Camden leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. My name's the only one on the deed. I bought this place before we got married. His expression didn't shift. And I'm guessing you didn't read the prenup that carefully, did you? Up close, Vanessa looked even worse than Camden had expected, mascara smudged beneath red-rimmed eyes, her expensive suit wrinkled as if she had spent the night in her car. She clutched her designer purse like a lifeline, but it wouldn't save her now. "Can I just come in?" Her voice softened, slipping into the coaxing tone she used whenever she wanted something. "Please, just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." No, Camden didn't move, standing firm in the doorway. "You get 5 minutes right here. Consider it more than you deserve." Vanessa hesitated, her eyes filled with a mix of desperation and hurt. "I made a terrible mistake," she began, wringing her hands. "Oscar didn't mean anything. It was stupid, selfish, but 10 years of marriage." 10 years of what? Camden cut her off, his voice calm but cutting. 10 years of me building a life while you were building a relationship with your coworker? "It wasn't like that," she said quickly, her tone defensive. "Things between us had grown distant. Oscar was just, he made me feel." "Don't." Camden's voice sliced through her excuses like a blade. "I don't care why you did it. I don't care how he made you feel. I care that you did it. That you looked me in the eye every day and lied. We can fix this," she pleaded. "People get past affairs all the time, with counseling, with time." "Want to know what's interesting?" Camden's voice was almost detached now, piercing in its precision. "You're not nearly as upset about losing me as you are about losing your comfortable life." "That's not true," she sobbed, tears spilling freely. "I love you, Camden." "No," he said evenly. "You love the life I gave you, the house, the lifestyle, the security. Tell me something, Vanessa, how long would it have gone on if I hadn't caught you?" She flinched, guilt flashing across her face before she wiped at her tears. 6 months, Camden answered for her. "I have every receipt, every hotel bill, every charge. Did you really think I wouldn't notice money disappearing from our joint account for your little getaways?" Vanessa's expression shifted, her shame twisting into anger. "You were watching me?" she snapped. "How dare you spy on me? How dare I?" Camden let out a short, bitter laugh. "You're standing on my porch, begging to be let back into my house after I caught you with your lover in my bedroom, and you're upset about invasion of privacy?" She opened her mouth to speak but hesitated, her words faltering against his cold fury. "People make mistakes," she said finally, taking a careful step closer, her voice softening. "Haven't you ever made a mistake?" Camden exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "A mistake." His voice was low, deadly. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. Sleeping with your coworker for months? That's not a mistake, Vanessa. That's a choice. A series of choices. Every time you met him, every time you texted him, every time you left our bed to go to his. What about counseling?" She tried again. "We could work through this. Learn to trust again." "There is no we anymore," Camden interrupted. He reached into his back pocket, pulling out an envelope. He held it out. "These are divorce papers. My lawyer will contact yours." Vanessa's breath hitched. "I don't have a lawyer," she whispered. "I don't have anything. You've frozen all our accounts." "Joint accounts," Camden corrected. "Your personal account is still active." "Oh, wait, that's right. You spent most of it on hotels and lingerie for Oscar, didn't you?" Her hand flew up, aiming to slap him. Camden caught her wrist in an instant. "Don't," he warned. He held her wrist just long enough to make his point, then released her. "You lost the right to touch me the moment you let him touch you." Vanessa's shoulders slumped, her body folding in on itself. Her voice was barely a whisper now. "What am I supposed to do?" she choked out. "Where am I supposed to go?" Camden exhaled slowly, stepping aside. He gestured toward the street. "You're a college-educated professional, Vanessa. Figure it out." Her face crumpled. "My parents will never forgive me. They already know." Camden's lips curled into a smirk, sharp as a knife. "I called them last night. Told them everything. Your mother cried." "Your father?" He asked if the prenup was still valid. "He seemed relieved when I said yes." Her breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. "You ruined my life." "No," Camden said, his expression unreadable. "You did that." Then, as if twisting the final knife, he added, "Just like I sent emails to HR documenting Oscar's history of pursuing married coworkers. Did you not know about his fiancée in Boston?" Vanessa staggered back. The words hit her like a physical blow. He's engaged," she whispered. Camden nodded. 3 years. Long distance. She was very interested in the photos I sent her, especially the ones from your marketing conference at the Riviera Hotel. His smirk deepened. "You know, the one you told me was for work?" He held the envelope out to her again. "Take the papers. Read them. Sign them. The prenup is very clear about infidelity," he continued. "You get what you brought in. minus any joint assets acquired during the marriage. Considering your shopping habits, that's not much. Vanessa stared at him, the realization dawning. She had lost everything. I helped you build your career, she spat, her voice rising. All those client dinners, those networking events, I was there. And while I was helping build our future, you were tearing apart our present. Camden checked his watch, clearly unimpressed by her outburst. Your 5 minutes are up, he said flatly. Go find a lawyer, Vanessa. The next time we talk, it'll be through them. Wait, she cried, grabbing the edge of the door as he started to close it. What about my things? My clothes. They're in garbage bags in the garage, Camden replied coolly. Along with all the lingerie receipts I found. Funny how your taste in underwear improved when you had someone else to show it to. Vanessa's breath hitched, her hand flying to her mouth in disbelief. You're being cruel, she whispered, her voice trembling. No, Camden corrected. I'm being honest. The garage will be open until noon. After that, anything left goes to Goodwill. I have nothing, she choked out, fresh tears spilling down her face. You have exactly what you chose, Camden said, closing the door with a firm, final click. Through the security feed, he watched as she stood frozen on the porch, clutching the divorce papers in her hands, her shoulders trembling with sobs. The weeks that followed blurred into a series of legal meetings and paperwork. Vanessa attempted to contact him twice more, even showing up at his office one afternoon, causing a scene that would become office gossip for weeks. You can't just throw me away, she had shrieked, her voice raw with desperation. 10 years. Don't I deserve a second chance? Camden ignored the murmurs from his coworkers. Let them talk. He had nothing to be ashamed of. At their legal meetings, Vanessa's attorney tried to fight the prenup. My client contributed significantly to this marriage, she argued, gesturing toward Camden with a sweeping motion. The house value has doubled, the investment portfolio. Your client violated the fidelity clause, Camden's lawyer interrupted smoothly, sliding a thick folder across the table. Inside were receipts, photos, and messages. Section 3, paragraph 2 is explicit about the consequences. Vanessa's lawyer hesitated but pushed forward. These photos were obtained without her consent, she countered. In public places, Camden's lawyer shot back. No expectation of privacy in a hotel lobby or a restaurant. And the credit card statements? Completely admissible. The negotiations lasted less than 20 minutes. Vanessa walked away with only her personal belongings, her car loan transferred to her name, and a settlement so small it wouldn't cover 3 months' rent in a decent apartment. A month later, word spread through Camden's office that Oscar had left the company. He'd returned to Boston, trying and failing to salvage his engagement. The last anyone heard, he'd taken a lower-paying job at a smaller firm, his once promising career now a casualty of his own recklessness. Vanessa, too, had switched jobs, accepting a lesser position across town. It was time to move forward, and this time, no one would ever make him doubt his worth again.